just want to go over the differences that you'll encounter between the new version of Reservation Web and the old version of Reservation Web that was reliant on Silverlight. So, of course, the big difference now is that everything in Reservation Web is now rendered in HTML5. Without going into way too much detail there, basically that means you don't need to use that Silverlight plugin ever again. So any modern browser, like Firefox, like Chrome, like Safari, even Edge will be able to log into Reservation Web now. An interesting point to that is that we're actually finding that Internet Explorer is giving us a suboptimal performance. So we're advising our innkeepers to stop using Internet Explorer, even though previously we were telling them that was the only game in town. So if you're still using Internet Explorer, it's probably going to be best to go ahead and just stop logging in through that. Use a different browser like Chrome or Firefox or Safari. That's generally where we're seeing the best performance at this point. Furthermore, on that point about Internet Explorer, if you log in via Internet Explorer, which I've got here up on the screen, you will see, let me go back to the actual page here, that you do not have access to the small setting. That is due to the same performance issues I was talking about earlier. We had to limit that to medium and large for rendering purposes. But if you log in any other browser like Chrome or Firefox, you will see that small setting there. So one of those first logins you do may kind of surprise you, but don't worry. Try a different browser. Everything will be fine there. So one of the biggest differences that I want to point out here in the new version is that we do not have access to the right-click functionality in the new Reservation Web. When you right-click, instead of getting that context menu where you could like check in the reservation, add a payment, send out an email, something like that, it right now just pulls up a browser context menu instead, which doesn't give us that functionality to modify that reservation. So what we do now, rather than right-click, is you can left-click on the reservation to select it, which gives it that blue border there. And now we have the Quick Actions panel here on the right that comes up once you select. This will give you that same functionality where you can check in a guest, you can edit the reservation, you can add a payment, you can send out emails or print up documents. So all that functionality is there, it's just in a slightly different place. That is probably going to be the biggest difference that you're going to encounter in the system, thankfully. So once we clear that hurdle, you should be good to go from there. There are a couple of other smaller changes I do want to point out, though. So here on the occupancy map, you may see it looks a little bit different. Not too much, but a little bit. And some of them, we can see we've got these blue eye dots over by the room names here on the left. That's just a quick connection to the room description. So if you hover over that for a moment, you'll get a quick pop-up telling you some details about that room. Additionally, we have the clean dirty status with this yellow broom button. That just shows you internally what rooms have been set to clean or dirty. That's not displayed anywhere else, so you don't need to worry about your guests seeing that or anything. But if you don't want to use it, that's fine. You can ignore that entirely. But if you want to keep that status, you can click on those to add or remove that clean or dirty status. Additionally, in that same area, we can expand or collapse this room name bar. So if this is taking up too much space, you can see there's this little blue arrow in this thin gray bar that we can click on to collapse that and give us a bit more calendar to work with. And then onwards, we will have the next big change, which is create documents. So to open up a reservation here, I'll double-click on that just like I would previously to go to the reservation details. You can see we still have the same sections for like contact, charges, payments, so on. Nothing too tremendously different there. The big difference that I want to point out is up at the top, we have our Actions button, but now we no longer have a print or email button. Instead, we've got this new one called Create Document. What we've done is kind of centralize the whole document creation process, and then later on in the flow, which we'll go over in just a moment, we can choose whether we want to email or print out from there. So I'm just going to go ahead and start that up for this John Smith reservation. Click on that. We'll see that we still have the same templates that you had before. Nothing's lost there. But I'll go ahead and generate a confirmation email using my custom RES template. So here it's notifying me that the customer on the reservation does not have an email address, so I won't be able to email. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and override that. I'll still have the ability to print the document. So here we go. I've got that same preview, which I can modify just as I would before. We can save a local copy, save it as a PDF. We can print it. Same style modifications as previous. We can insert images. We can insert links. All that's still there. And then once we're finally done with that, we can then print it up. We'll then show it as a PDF preview. If you're having trouble where it tries to save the file rather than show you this preview, we may need to look into your browser default actions for PDF, but that's probably way too in-depth for this presentation. So if you have that problem, give us a call at support, and we'll get that straightened out for you. But otherwise, it's just a simple print, and that'll go out from there. Regarding email, so this customer did not have an email address in place previously, but if we type that in, we can then email that out, even despite that warning. So again, it looks a little different, but generally after you get used to it, it's not that different that you need to relearn everything. One note, just to kind of point out something that's happening right now. Previously, when you'd go to generate the document, users in a smaller window size would only see this display up here where we have Save As, Email, and Print. Yesterday, this email button was actually reading as group rather than email, even though it was an email button. So a lot of people were very confused by that, rightfully so, but we've got that fixed now. So now when you go in, you should see email there, and that should be working just fine. So when we click on that, we have that same email subject, who's the recipient, and so on. And additionally, one other thing I wanted to point out here regarding documents, we currently have a restriction for guests that do not have the marketing allowed flag, which here I've got up the customer details. You can see we've got this marketing allowed here. I'm going to go ahead and deactivate it, and I'll also add in an email address. And now, if I try to create either a blank email template or a miscellaneous email, it's going to tell me that I can't email based on the fact that they are set to not receive marketing emails. The thinking behind that is that we generally see users put marketing-based templates inside either miscellaneous or blank, rather than things like confirmation or folio. So we just wanted to put that gate there to make sure that you're not bugging people that ask not to be bugged. We are still receiving feedback on that, so that may change in the future, but that is currently how that performs. Other documents like cancellation, confirmation, folio, all of those are completely unrestricted. The only ones that are adhering to that marketing allowed flag is just blank email and miscellaneous. And that can easily be taken care of just by going into the customer record and flipping that marketing allowed. While we're here in the reservation details, we did relocate some information, specifically the date created information and the adults and children, which we've got here in the top right, where we have a lot of the reservation details. Previously, those used to be up in the top left under the check-in, check-out dates, so just got moved over a little bit, no problem there. One other thing to point out, in the guest details, guest record phone numbers now require a country code. And once we start typing that in, it should automatically pre-fill to US. So more often than not, you're not going to have to worry about entering that in. But if it is a different country, Spain, Canada, whatever, you would just want to select that from this drop-down to populate that. And that will save from there. Okay, so moving on from the reservation details, let's take a look at the rate screen. We've got a few changes I want to highlight there. So you can see we still have that same calendar view. So not too many changes here. The first thing I want to point out, though, is that we've kind of altered how the base rate settings look a little bit. So you can see right from the calendar, we can see what that weekday, weekend, extra guest fee, and base minimum stay is right there. So that's put right on the calendar. Now, if we want to actually change that, we have this edit button next to each room. Clicking on that will then take us to this new window to edit those base rate values, where we could set that weekday, weekend, and so on. So slightly different from what you may have experienced back in the previous version, when I think it was a pop-out tray rather than this window, but again, serves basically the same functionality. Additionally, here on the rate screen, you can see that we've got these new blue and orange flags to highlight modified values. So in the previous version, you may remember that we had, I think it was a orange star and a yellow hash mark, if I have that right, it might be backwards, to indicate if a base rate had been modified to a new rate or if a base minimum night stay requirement had been changed. Instead, now we have this blue flag with an R to indicate if the rate has been changed from its base value, and the orange S flag to indicate if that base minimum stay requirement has been modified. And we have that legend for all these icons down here in the bottom left, in case you just need to remember that on the fly. But again, serves the exact same purpose, just highlighting that it's been changed from the base value. That is pretty much it for the rate screen. We still have our navigation bar, the ability to see allocated units, minimum stays, all those toggles are still there. Still have the advanced selection tool that you're hopefully used to. It's pretty powerful. And then the copy rate selection, all that's very, very familiar. But moving on to the next section that I wanted to highlight is in the settings. If you go to upload photos from your property settings or your room settings, the new upload tool is much easier. So now you just go to add a photo. I'll go ahead and add this wonderful happy face. And now all I do, excuse me, all I do is simply set the part that I want to crop. I can add a description from there, and then click upload, and I'm done. Previously, we had to do this whole mess with like setting the thumbnail dimensions, set the full-size dimensions, and it was just a lot of steps. It was pretty annoying in my opinion. So now all you just do it once, upload, finished. So much, much easier. Additionally, back in the settings section, we have also changed the color picker tool for whenever you want to set a color to be associated with a room or a special event. But to show you how that works, I'll go ahead and open up one of our special events here. And in that settings, we just have this window showing what color is currently set. If we click on that, that'll pull up the new color picker tool. And all we do for that is we've got these three bars on the right. The first one, we're basically picking what hue we want to use for our color. And then the other two is just brightness and saturation, or you could just go over in this gradient field on the left and pick from there. And then once you have that set, just click out and save. The previous method had a lot of options. You could either enter it as a hex color code, or you could choose from a long list of color descriptions, or enter RGB values. So it was flexible, but maybe a little overwhelming. So we wanted to make that easier as well. But that does generally fill out the list of all the differences that I wanted to highlight. So at this point, Candace, if you could go ahead and read through those questions, I'd like to go ahead and answer anything people may have.
Sure. So if you have any questions that James hasn't gone through, feel free to ask them in that questions box. We have gotten some so far, so let me pull them up. So a couple of these I know we went through already. Can you email multiple people at once now?
So for that, we can select multiple reservations here on the occupancy map by holding down the control key on the keyboard and clicking multiple reservations. Unfortunately, we can. So now that I've got them all selected, over here in the Quick Actions panel, we have this little paper icon for the create document functionality. So with all those selected, I'm going to say, okay, let's whip up some folios for these people. I'm not sure if I've got email addresses in place for all these guys, but we can see here are all the previews for the 3 reservations. And from there, if I go to email all known addresses, and then that will send out. So yes, we can indeed send multiple emails.
Awesome.
And similarly, we should be able to do the same from the bookings list with that control or shift click.
One question is asking, is there any way to go back to the original, the previous version of RezOvation? And I believe the answer is no. But if you want to elaborate that on, okay.
So unfortunately, the whole reason why we're launching this HTML version of the software is that Microsoft is basically ending support for the Silverlight plugin. We're a little surprised that we were able to get as much support as we did from them at this point. But as we go on month by month, year by year, you're going to see fewer browsers support that Silverlight plugin. I believe they have announced, I might be mistaken, so please don't quote me on this. I think they said that even Edge isn't supporting Silverlight at this point. It's really just Internet Explorer as far as Windows systems go. So once Windows decides to stop packing in Internet Explorer, then we won't have anything that uses Silverlight. So just to make sure that modern computers can keep running RezOvation Web, we need to move forward with this new HTML version.
Great. So another question that came up, how do we change the order of the room names? I'm assuming on the occupancy map.
Yes. So right now, you can see on the occupancy map, up in the top left here, we have this drop-down box that currently says room name. That means I'm sorting these values here by their room name alphabetically, but we can click on that to choose to sort alphabetically by room abbreviation or room type based on either name or abbreviation. Now, the wrinkle to that is that what may be displayed here could be either a room name or abbreviation, regardless of what you select here. To kind of show you what I'm talking about, if we go back to the Settings menu, under General Settings for your displays, we could choose if we want to show the room name, the room abbreviation, or both abbreviation and name. So that sort by isn't necessarily a display, is probably the easiest way to say that. So if I go back with both abbreviation and name shown, you'll see here in just a second. There we go. So now we've got both name and abbreviation, even though they're the exact same. Sorry, got to keep my data kind of simple for testing, but that's what's going on there. But yeah, we can absolutely resort that with that drop down in the top left.
Great. Okay, so the next one, and I'm not sure if we have all the details, but Robert is asking, is it possible to import reservations made from, for example, Booking.com? So I'm assuming ones that aren't integrated.
So if you have a list of reservations that have not been downloaded into the reservation platform, we do have some capability on the back end to import those in. That said, it's not maybe exactly what you're expecting. We can't carry over detailed payment information or other custom fields that other platforms may use. Basically, on the back end, we're importing things like who's this guest, what's their contact information, what days are they staying, what room are they in, maybe some notes. But we can import a CSV spreadsheet list into our system on the back end. So if you want to do that, just let us know and we can start approaching that.
Awesome. Next, Zachary is asking, he said there was some mention, which we did do some talking about, the reporting being a little bit different in the marketing, possibly amendable. Can you show this if so? So I think he's talking about how you can edit the report.
Mm-hmm. So if we go into the reports menu here, we still have the same selection here on the left, but let me whip up a quick housekeeping reports. Which still has the same options, not too many differences there. But once we generate that, now we can actually edit that. Previously, reports in particular had been locked down. You could modify emails and printouts, but not reports. Now you can modify reports. And then it's the same email, printout, save a local file from there.
Awesome. Can you produce a report by day of arrival so they can see what days are weakest for occupancy?
Sure. So I believe that is reservation by arrival status that we're looking for. So we could say, okay, we're looking for people who are arriving today. Give us that particular report. And I could have even limited that status to simply just arrivals. But here we go. So we could say, okay, Mr. Baba Yaga is coming in today for room number 20.
Awesome. We have someone asking, how do you get rid of the Post-it note? They had one that popped up and aren't able to get rid of it.
So back on that occupancy map control, up in the top right, we have a couple of toggles to show extra information. We've got things like this dollar sign, or dollar rather, to show rack rates for the rooms, the star for minimum stay requirements. But specifically what you're looking for is over on the far right, we've got the Post-it Note button, which will either show or hide that note. That is globally shared for all of your user accounts in the property. So if there's any info like plumbers coming at 3 p.m., leave back door unlocked or something like that, you can put it in the note and then everybody who logs in should be able to see it. But if you just want to hide it, just click on that button there on the far right with the Post-it Note icon and that'll get rid of it.
Awesome. On the guest screen, the zip code falls between town and state. Is that correct?
Yes, that should discern a autofill. Let me clear that out. So if I put in my zip code, that will automatically populate that city and state that way.
Awesome.
The catch there is you just have to have that country code filled, but I believe we have that where it just automatically defaults to US. Let me verify that real quick. Go into the guest screen to add a new guest. Yes, so it defaults to US, and as soon as we punch in that zip code for US, we get that city and state filled in.
Awesome. Can you produce a report by zip code or state to see where the business is coming from?
Yes, just in a slightly different location. So what we can do for that is you'll probably want to do that in your guest list, where we can then create filters based on certain criteria. So we can say, okay, we'll add in a custom filter where we are looking for zip codes that contain 787 that were created. So I got so many options here, it takes a while to find it sometimes. There we go, created date is after January 1st, 2017. And that way we'll see what guests from the Austin area, just had that handy, came in this year. So we can generate that via the custom filter, and I've got 36 items, which we can then export out as a CSV spreadsheet, which you can use in Excel.
Sweet. So Marty is asking, she's saying that the program seems to be running very slow compared to the old version. Would this likely just be due to the web browser that she's using?
Precisely. As I kind of touched on at the beginning there, Internet Explorer is generally going to run much, much slower, especially if you have over 30, 40 rooms, it's going to really crawl. So once you jump to Chrome or Firefox, it should move much quicker. But if you're still seeing performance hits in those browsers, let us know. It may be some sort of security software that's slowing things down, so we can hopefully get that running a bit quicker for you.
Awesome. Anthony's asking, have group bookings changed at all?
Not at this point. We're still looking into changing that functionality to kind of match how it worked in Reservation GT. For the time being, it does still use the same group functionality in RezOvation Web that was in the Silverlight version, where basically you can go to the reservation details and we have a group name field. and that basically associates that reservation with that group. So within the bookings list, you can say, okay, show me everybody for this group, find it that way. And also we have some multi-emailing options for everybody associated with that group as well. But it's not quite the full group within Reservation GT where you can kind of split up payments very easily. So we're looking into that, but not quite yet.
Yep. One question coming in from Janice: how do the items number of adults and number of children get into the record? I just get a red circle that prevents her from entering.
Well, so if it's an existing reservation that came in from either manual bookings or online bookings, these fields here in the reservation details are grayed out. We can't edit those directly. If we want to change those out, what we'll need to do is edit the room item. So over here in charges on the left, I'll double click into this room fee item. And then from there, you should be able to toggle that number of adults and children. I'm not exactly sure what could be causing a red circle there, if that's where she's seeing that.
Yep.
But you should be able to change it there. As far as what guests would see when they're booking through your booking engine, it's simply just number of guests. They don't see differences between adults and children. They're just going to say we've got 3 people. So children only really comes into play when you're doing a manual booking.
Okay. And one more time, Jackie was saying she didn't hear this part, and I know it's one of the top questions. How do you make the site smaller? So that I'm assuming mostly the occupancy map. Can you go over that one more time?
Sure. So again, this kind of ties into, if you're logging into Internet Explorer, you'll see we've got the height and width settings up here in the top right. But if you click on that, you'll only have medium and large options. A lot of properties, especially with a lot of rooms, really rely on that small. Internet Explorer, due to performance reasons, doesn't have access to that small setting. So if you log in using just about any other browser, be it Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, whatever your flavor is, you'll see that you do have that small setting again, which should be pretty much the same size you were used to back in the Silverlight version. But if that's still not quite the right size for what you're needing, you may want to take a look at the browser's zoom settings, and you can kind of further tweak it from there to get that exact fit that you're looking for.
Awesome. And another question from Janice: when do you think we'll be able to have the room number show when looking at checked-in?
I'm trying to interpret that correctly. So I'm assuming that may be from the bookings lists. We can filter that for who's in-house, or checked in rather. And unfortunately, this booking list does not have a column for rooms. That is something that we did have in Reservation GT. So we are currently looking into getting that added in, because of course that would be tremendously helpful to be able to see it from this list view. So I think that's likely what she's asking about there. If it is something like the housekeeping report to see who's checked in there, we can definitely modify those templates for the report to include that information. That we can do.
Daniel is asking, he's having trouble moving around the occupancy map. It's running pretty slow. Any chance that that gets improved, or do you have any other tips on how maybe he can improve that slowness?
The big one there is make sure you're not in Internet Explorer. Sorry to keep beating that drum, but that is going to change a lot there if you're still using it. But if you're still seeing some slowness there, we can try things like checking for security settings to see if there's anything that could be slowing that connection between your system and ours. Additionally, if you go to larger display settings, that'll have the system render less as it shows you the calendar, so that should increase the speed of when it shifts around like that. But otherwise, our development team is still looking into optimizing a lot of this. Now that we're finally seeing people using this in the wild, we're getting a lot of data back. So as we get more releases out there, I think you're going to see this product really improve as time goes on.
Yep, definitely. One question from John. Can the notes box be widened?
I know exactly what you're talking about, John. So when you open it up by default, it is pretty tiny, almost illegibly so. And I know exactly where you guys are coming from there. What you can do is we do have this drag bar that you can click and drag to stretch that out. That said, if you click and drag it, it doesn't store that setting currently. What I'm going to go ask development for is to, one, change that initial size, because it is really, really tiny. And then two, I want to see if there's a way where we can store wherever you drag it as the new default. I would like to make that enhancement, so hopefully we can get that out to you pretty soon.
Awesome. Jaime is asking, viewing Rezo on a tablet does not look quite the same as it does on desktop. Will Rezo be changed so that it'll be the same? I'm assuming the mobile version, will that be updated so that it'll look the same as the new web?
Right now, the mobile web app, which you get to by opening up a mobile browser on your phone or tablet or whatever, and going to that same my.RezOvation.com, loads up the mobile version, of course, which is similar but different. I should say greatly different. It's a bit limited. You have access to your list of reservations, you have access to your calendar, you can pull up guest details, you can make reservations, but it doesn't have the full functionality like running reports, changing rates, and so on. Right now, we definitely have that on the docket to get that updated in the near future. But for the moment, you will want to stick to that same mobile web app that's in place right now. But stay tuned. Hopefully, we'll have some good news for you soon.
Awesome. Let's see. Janice is asking, she uses the source to collect country, state, or country info, and she has the list put in alphabetically in settings, but in the live version, the list is not alphabetically the same, with reason to stay.
So we have got some feedback about that. Right now, as you can kind of see, it is very scattershot on how that sorts. I'm not really sure what it's using to sort. I think it might be date created, but even so, it can be kind of messy for everybody. To help out, right now what you can do is type to jump to that section. So if you have fairly unique sources, that's an easy way of accessing is just click on that source drop down and type in the one you want to go to. But if you have 15 different permutations for like Booking.com, Sam, Booking.com, Mike, or whatever, that can be a little harder that way. So that is one of the points of feedback that I'm going back to development, say, hey, we need to sort out this sorting from source and reasons for stay.
Awesome. Do we have confirmation that the text message confirmation is working?
That is a very good question. To tell the truth, we haven't made any changes to the booking engine component. So if it had been working previously, it should still be working. That said, I couldn't say 100% certainty if that's still working at the moment, so I would need to check on that. But again, if it had been working, should still be working.
Awesome. Does this version recognize previous guests and merge them automatically?
Not automatically, no. What we need, and I think this is one of those parity items that we're pulling from Reservation GT. Previously, we do. Perfect. So in the guest lists, we have this filter that's built in the system called possible duplicates. And then from there, if we recognize somebody who's the same, like Mr. Gibberish here, we can select both of them and then use this button where we've got the two people becoming one person to merge them together. And then we can set what we want to use as the primary record of detail to combine them, but that does not happen automatically. You would need to manually do that from this list.
Okay. So it looks like we have a couple more questions. Thanks for handling all of these, James. I know everybody appreciates it. One of the next ones is, how will the bed and breakfast phone numbers be imported if they don't include country code?
That I haven't seen myself. I think, but I would need to view it myself to verify that it should drop in with that proper country code just by default. So if bed and breakfast has just 512 rather than 1512, I believe we should be adding that in at the point that we download, but I'm going to need to double check on that one.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's see here. Charles is saying he's been using RezOvation for years, and he has lots of items that they no longer use. And I'm assuming it's like guest records or something. Let's see. He's saying, can we delete the ones we don't use any longer if they're attached to reservation more than 3 years prior?
Right. So I'm guessing he's probably talking about extras. If not, it might be something like packages or discounts, but it's likely going to be kind of a similar process. So if you go to your settings and pull up your extras or packages or what have you, you'll find that you may not be able to actually delete the item that you want to get rid of. The reason for that is that item still exists in the record of the invoice that we have, so if we outright deleted it, it would cause some instability. We don't want that. But what we can do is if you edit that item, what we can do is change it from available to out of stock. Doing that is going to keep it from coming up in your extras list when you go to add in an extra to a reservation. So we can clean it up that way. It'll still technically exist, it just won't be active.
Awesome. One more, when you create a reservation, how do you send an email and print out registration cards while you're on the reservation page without having to save and then go back to the reservation?
Yes, so that is a point of feedback that we're looking at the moment. We have heard from a couple of other users that this flow is a little disruptive. So to kind of highlight what they're talking about, if you go to make a new reservation, just go through the flow of picking a room, assigning a guest. At this point, the Create Document button is grayed out. The reason for that is that the confirmation number hasn't been created yet, so the reservation hasn't really been committed to the system just yet. So what you have to do to be able to do anything with that is save it. That commits it to the database, gives it a confirmation number, all those good things, but unfortunately that dumps you back to the occupancy map, and that reservation may be 3 pages down on the screen, so it's kind of a pain to get back to. So to answer the question directly, we don't have an easy way to do that right now, but that is definitely some feedback that we received that we want to improve that experience on. Some of the things that we're looking at is keeping within the reservation details on save, or perhaps at least defaulting down to the part of the occupancy map where that reservation was created rather than taking it back at the top, so that it's at least easy to click back into. So we are going to try to optimize that for you guys.
Awesome. Let's see, can you print a housekeeping report for a specific housekeeper?
Yes, I believe we should be able to. So if we go back to housekeeping, no. We can't print it for a specific. My apologies, I misspoke there. But what we can do is down at the bottom of the settings, we do have this group by option where we can sort the results by housekeeper. So when we do that, let me see if I can get a good date that actually has some data. Yes, so we've got our housekeeper with no name here, just coming up as a blank. Not super great in display, but trust me, it's just no name. And then below that, we have housekeeper administrator and their set of rooms, which is just 13. So we can at least break it off per housekeeper and kind of organize it that way.
Awesome. Are there any plans to expand the online help documentation that can help in the onboarding process?
Yes, absolutely. So what we're doing right now with this webinar, this is going to be one of the very first forays into that. We're going to record the session, post it online for everybody else. So we have this as a living document for them to work with. But more so, we are heavily looking at going through our online support articles, fleshing those out, getting more videos added, because we want to enable you guys to take care of problems yourself as much as we can. We want to be there for you, but we also want to be able to let you take care of it too. So yes, we will be expanding that greatly.
Awesome. Let's see here. Is there any way you can keep the changes you make to the column list on the waiting list or all sales so it doesn't have to be changed every day?
Right. So if you go from this like a quick view up here, which used to be an arrow back in Reservation Web Silverlight, we can go to our waiting list manager, and the various columns, we can click and drag that border to resize it as we need. As it stands, whenever you return to it, it just snaps back to its default state. We don't have it configured to store those new settings, but kind of similar to the reservation details notes with, I would like to see that data stored if possible, so that you don't have to keep tinkering with that each and every day.
Awesome. If checking in a group, can you check in individuals and not have to check in the whole group?
Well, I think what we may be looking at there is if we have a single reservation, one invoice, with multiple rooms added to different people. So I'm just going to modify this guy real quick, add some more rooms on it. Let's say we'll put this one as Mr. 333 and this one as Mr. A. We've got 3 different people on the same reservation. Unfortunately, the single reservation document only has one status tied to it. So if we wanted to be able to check them in separately, we would need to have 3 different reservations in that case.
Okay. David is asking, he has 10 years of guests and some have 6 or more fields because of booking online and it doesn't show the history. Will they be able to be merged? So I guess merging duplicate guests, is there a way to do that?
Yes, you should be able to do that. If Mr. John Smith has booked 12 times through your booking engine, you're likely going to have 12 records for John Smith. So the easy way to sort that out, it's still a manual process, but we can definitely take care of that. If you go to your guest list, and then up in the top right of that guest list, we'll choose that possible duplicates field. And let me see if I can find a good example for you guys. We've probably got 20 people named Tests. Here we go. So we got James Tests, James Test, James Test, all probably from the same source, same person, just makes that many records for them. So once you select them, which you could do either by holding Control on your keyboard and then clicking to highlight them in orange like this, or alternately you can shift-click to choose everything in between. But once it's all highlighted, just use this merge button with the 2 people becoming 1 up here at the top, and that will associate all the sales between those 4 records into a single record. So now when I merge them, we now have 1 single James Test, and within that we can see all the purchases that were previously on those 4 now on 1 single record.
Awesome. Let's see, we don't have too many more. Thanks for holding on the line, everybody. I think we're getting a lot of good content that hopefully is helpful for everybody. When you're on the screen where you're assigning a room to someone, the room list comes up by type of room instead of room number. Can this be changed to be in the room number order?
That is a good question. So to kind of go back to what they're talking about there, in the room and guest selection screen, if we show all rooms, that's first sorted by room type, like they described here. We can see on the far left, this giving me all the base rooms first, which is one of my room types, and then all the rooms within that. That might be a useful feature to see, kind of similar on the occupancy map. We have that versatility of either doing room name or just room type. So we can bounce between the 2 on the occupancy map, but currently within the reservation details, it's just type. So that may be something worth looking into to see if we can add that same just name as well as they're describing.
Awesome. Ash is asking, I know you talked about the mobile site. She's asking if the app is being updated soon.
Yes, so we did previously have a iOS app that had not seen support for a very long time. In fact, so long that it's now got kicked off the App Store because it wasn't 64-bit compliant, which the new iOS 11 requires. So yes, I can deliver good news there. We are very close to a release of getting that new 64-bit version out that actually has received a bit of a new fresh coat of paint. So if you have Reservation installed on your phone already, that will update with that new version. But otherwise, I believe we're likely going to send out an email saying, hey, new iOS app version is available. Please go download from the App Store. So yes, that is coming soon.
Yay! Yes, we will definitely be notifying everyone when that is ready, so stay tuned. Let's see. We have a room showing up in the rates that is no longer available. How do we delete that room?
Mm-hmm. So you might be able to delete it from the settings if you just wanted to wipe it off the face of the earth. But similar to the extras, you may not be able to do that if there are bookings associated with that room. So what you may want to do instead, kind of same frame of mind with the extras, if you edit the room, I'm just going to pull up the room settings here to kind of show you what I'm talking about. We can disable it to basically turn it off. Now, that room is no longer bookable. It's turned off, but it may still be shown on your occupancy map. What controls that is up here in your top right toggle section, we have this lock icon. Clicking on that will either show or hide the rooms displayed. So I turned off room 50. Let me scroll down there real quick. There we go. So right now it's currently hidden, but if I click on that lock icon, it's going to display it as a grayed out room, like that. So if it's showing like that with just a bunch of gray, just click on that padlock and that'll hide it.
Awesome. David's asking, there's a small property and years ago there was a spot to input a photo. Is that available still? I'm not exactly sure.
We do have the same options to upload photos for the overall property in the Photos Properties settings. We can also upload photos for room types and also for packages. But we don't have the ability to add photos for like guest records or things like that. That may be an enhancement that we add in the future. We have heard some innkeepers want that. But right now, just property, room types, packages, basically.
Awesome. Another question, are you planning changes to the customer interface? I think you've touched on this a little bit, but things such as being able to book several rooms in one operation.
So we are looking into some big changes to the booking engine experience. So for when guests are booking through your website, right now they'll go through the booking engine that is linked to RezOvation. We have received some feedback from some innkeepers that it does feel a little outdated. So we're basically building that up from the ground up, and hopefully we'll have some news for you soon on that front. Functionally, I think it's going to be basically more or less the same, but it's going to have a responsive design, all sorts of huge photos all over the place, things that we've noticed from our other sister products like HomeAway and Expedia that really maximize that booking potential. We want to bring that to the booking engine experience as well. So that should be coming soon as well. I know I keep saying that. I wish I could give you firm dates, but unfortunately, that's just the nature of development. We can't really peg anything down exactly, but soon, very soon, we should have that.
Awesome. For retail sales, adding an extra, the list is no longer available in alphabetical order. Can we put it in alphabetical order, and also can they delete extras that have been discontinued?
So that is kind of similar to the sources question we got a little while ago. When you go to add in an extra, you may see that when you go to select that extra, the list is a little bonkers. I've got M's in the middles of my ones, I's in the middle of the ones, so it's, again, kind of just no real sort. You can type to filter that down. This one actually works a bit better than the sources drop-down that we looked at. This is an actual search. So if you know the exact extra that you're looking for, we can pull it up that way just by typing in that search. That said, yes, I agree with you 1,000%. We need to get that sort into something more logical so people can actually scroll through it if they want to. But right now it's kind of a mess. And to the second part of the question, kind of similar to that room deactivation that we looked at earlier, you may not be able to delete the extra outright if it has ever been put on an invoice. So rather than deleting it, what you'll want to do is turn that extra off. So you'll just go to the extra setting like we got here. And then within that, we'll just change that availability from available to out of stock. And that basically deactivates that product. It doesn't come up when you go to that add extra list. It won't be shown there. The only place it's shown is here in the extra settings.
Awesome. One additional question on the booking engine. Other than the room description, there's a short description above the picture stating rate. How do you change the short description in that booking engine?
That, I believe, is controlled. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, that is a deep cut. I'm going to have to pull up some examples here. So let me pull up my particular. Actually, I think he's likely talking about the standard search here. All right. Here we go. So for when we search for a room in the booking engine, so we can see right now we've got a $22 average for this particular room. That is, I believe, calculated on the fly based on the room rates for those dates. But that doesn't quite feel like what he was asking about there. Let me think.
We can maybe follow up on that one afterwards. There's a couple that are more detailed suggestions and things like that I think we can share with the team the feedback. And then if you want to reach out with additional questions, obviously feel free to contact our support team and we can walk with through your questions in a little more detail. So I think at this point we've gone through mostly everything. I'm trying to pull out ones that are definitely different. And we're almost about time. So if there's anything else, James, that you wanted to hit on, we can go through that. But other than that, I think we'll just provide all of these questions to our support team and make sure if we didn't follow up with you that we will do so afterwards.
No, I don't really have any new points to bring up. Again, just want to reiterate for the thousandth time. If you're using Internet Explorer, please stop. You'll have a much better time in Chrome or Firefox, I promise. But otherwise, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for everybody who joined in and wanted to see what we have in the new product. And we want to keep bringing you great stuff, so please stay tuned.
Yes, agreed. Thanks everybody for participating today. We had a big group and we had lots of great questions and engagement, so we really appreciate it. I know hopefully it's been very helpful for everyone, and thank you, James, for running through answers to all of these questions. Like I said, we have recorded this session today. We will send it out. I'm hoping sooner rather than later with a top hit list of our #1 FAQs that have come through over the past couple of days. And if you have any additional questions or need any additional help, please feel free to contact our support team.
Absolutely.
Awesome. With that, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will talk soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.